Story 1. My first watch was an Omega. I saved up while in high school to buy it. One of my good friends asked to wear it for one period and promised to return it at lunch. He begged, so I gave in. He smashed the glass, returned the watch, and said it was a fake. He claimed the glass had cracked on its own and that he had not done it. He later became a medical doctor, is now involved in politics, and holds a state office. I am still angry about the watch because he never admitted he broke it. He was jealous. A jerk then, a jerk now. Story 2. A coworker told my story back to me as his own twice. Story 3. I speak French, though I am losing it from lack of use. One of my male friends from college started dating a girl from France. He was excited because she could talk to me in her native language and I could help translate. He brought her to a party at my sorority house and introduced us. I greeted her in French with a very simple bonjour. Bienvenue, comment CAVA, which is just hi, welcome, how are you? She gave me a blank stare and turned red. Then she said in what I thought was a strange accent that she was sorry but she did not understand me. I asked him if she was really French, because maybe he had been confused. He looked at her and she turned and left. He followed, returned a bit later, and said he had caught up to her. She started screaming at him in perfect Midwestern accented English, calling him a jerk for setting her up to look like a fool. He had genuinely been excited that he could introduce her to someone she could talk to. So he was blown away by her accusations and then angry that she had lied. She apparently thought faking an accent would make her more appealing. I would see her around campus after that, but she avoided me completely. To be honest, I felt bad for her. But if you were going to fake it, at least pick a country with a language you can speak. Story 4. When I was a kid, the internet did not exist, so my friends were whoever lived in the neighborhood. One boy was a well-known liar and exaggerator. We were about 14 years old. He could play guitar and always talked himself up about it, claiming he had a band. He could play, but the band did not exist. One day I called him at home. A few minutes into the conversation, he told me he was in Florida with his band. This was before pagers were common. I responded briefly and ended the call. Then I told all the other kids in the neighborhood. Story 5. When I was a public defender, my client called his victim from the jail phone the night before his trial and repeatedly said, "Kill," in an attempt to intimidate her. When I told him how stupid that was, his excuse was that he had been watching Kill Bill and someone had changed the channel on the cell block's communal television. He is now serving 28 years in prison. Story 6. I did not feed your dog any human food, my mom said, while my dog was vomiting and defecating all over my house. Story 7. I dated a woman who was a pathological liar. I did not realize it was a real condition. When my dad first mentioned it, I thought he was exaggerating. After the relationship ended, I saw how ridiculous the lies were and how foolish I had been for believing them. One time she called out of work and said she was on her parents' boat in the ocean and the boat had run out of fuel. So they had to call a friend to rescue them and tow them to shore. I later learned she had actually been at a party and was intoxicated. She claimed to have met Donald Trump and his associates in Atlantic City in 2013. She said they invited her and a friend to ride around the city, visit his casino, and enjoy high-quality food and drinks without paying. She told me she had infectious mononucleosis while we were dating, but I did not. She said the doctor called it anxiety-induced mononucleosis, which explained why I had not caught it. Around the same time, she told me she had met a man at a party who was hitting on her, but that she had not hooked up with him. A week later, I discovered she had. She had been engaged previously and called off the engagement. She pawned the engagement ring and used the money to buy alcohol. She totaled 3 cars in her life but repeatedly convinced the insurance company the accidents were not her fault and received replacement vehicles each time. Story 8. My friend told me that getting a Peloton changed her life. I looked up her workout stats and she had used it 4 times in 5 months. Her husband did a little better, using it 9 times. I don't know why this annoyed me so much. Story 9. My little girl told everyone in the supermarket that our cat had died, and she was sad. We don't own a cat. Story 10. In the early 1990s, I was at work making $5 an hour. A coworker looked me straight in the eye and said he had bought a surface-to-air missile from China and kept it at his mom's house in another city. What the heck, dude? That is not even close to believable. Story 11. In 5th grade, a friend of ours tried to convince us he used to hang out with the band Sublime. Among other things, he said he was the person featured on the cover of their self-titled album, that he used to do drugs with them, and that he had tried heroin once. We were 11 years old, and he claimed this all happened 2 years before he moved to our school. So yes, a 9-year-old had done all this wild stuff. We constantly called him out, but he kept making up more stories. We stopped hanging out with him because he was full of lies. Story 12. My mom, after 11-year-old me accidentally destroyed her favorite vase by throwing my brother's stuffed animals around the living room, said she was not mad. Story 13. I used to work with a man who was a serial liar. He could not tell the truth if his life depended on it. He told so many lies. This is my personal favorite. Keep in mind that at the National Football League combined, the 40-yard dash is the standard measure of speed. A time of 4.5 seconds is great. A time of 4.4 seconds is elite. The fastest time ever recorded by a prospect, I believe, is 4.24 seconds. The man I worked with claimed that back in his Army days he ran a 4.2-second dash in combat boots. Needless to say, I am skeptical. Story 14. When my friend was an infant, her mother placed a 2-year-old sibling in the crib and left the room briefly. When she returned, my friend was crying with teeth marks on her forehead. When the mother asked the older sibling what had happened, the sibling calmly said, "She bit herself." Story 15. I used to have a friend who constantly lied. She told me her biological parents, who she said lived together, were divorced and seeing other people, and that she had 25 siblings. I mentioned this to her mother once, and that was an interesting conversation. She also told us she had cancer, and a week later it was miraculously cured. Story 16. In high school, a friend told me he didn't steal our other friend's watch. He was wearing the watch when I asked him about it. Story 17. A childhood friend and I met for coffee after not seeing each other for several years. He casually let it slip that ever since he earned a black belt, he has had to register with the state as a human weapon. Story 18. We cannot give you a raise right now, but we will compensate you as soon as the budget allows. In practice, when the budget allows means you already have another job offer and have given your 2-week notice. Story 19. I never said you had to sign the document if it wasn't true, says the person with 3 emails in her outbox asking me to sign it after I told her it was untrue. Story 20. My brother told me I was a dragon and I totally believed him. I was a dumb kid, but now I am a dumb adult. Story 21. As a tax accountant, I am told lies all the time during tax season about how much money people actually made. My favorite was a man who told me he was broke because he made only $35,000 per year in New York City, so my very reasonable fee was too much for him. He said this after asking if he could deduct the new Bayerisch Motor & Werke 5 Series he had just bought for his son. Paid in cash. Story 22. The company is in great shape. Do not pay any attention to rumors about financial trouble. Story 23. When my little brother mixed about 50 condiments, including sprinkles, ketchup, cereal, and other things, into a bag of popcorn and ate it, he told us it was delicious even though his face looked like he had just eaten 10 extremely sour warheads at once. He later admitted he had only wanted us to eat it, but we never did. Story 24. I was picking up a sofa from a man I found on Kijiji when he stopped me in the hallway to ask if I wanted a mirror he was getting rid of. I wasn't interested, but my wife was, so we stopped to take a look. He said, "It was a gift from my son-in-law. It's a beautiful mid-century antique. I'll let it go for $75. He kept praising the mirror and told me to pick it up and feel how sturdy it was. I picked it up. It was very heavy. I looked at the back and saw a Value Village sticker with a $30 price tag. I chuckled and asked if he would take less than $75. He said, "I really couldn't." I pointed out the Value Village tag on the back. We ended up getting the mid-century antique mirror for $15, and my wife and I still laugh about the amazing deal we got. Story 25. My ex told me he was in a car accident, that he totaled his car and broke a few ribs. He was trying to get sympathy so I would get back together with him. He blamed the accident on me. saying he was distracted after the breakup. He sent a photo of his car smashed in. I did a Google image search and found the first picture of that make and model that was wrecked. He formulated the story after finding the picture, but the wheels didn't match. I drove by his house that evening. The car was fixed and in his driveway. He said he paid the shop extra to get it in that day so he could have his car to come see me if I wanted him to. I laughed. Story 26. We will keep your resume on file and let you know if any other positions open. As a recent graduate searching for a job, this is painful. Story 27. I used to play Dungeons and Dragons with a pathological liar. He also had incredible luck with natural 20 rolls. He always tried to act like a macho tough guy who had been in serious scrapes. One time, unprompted and clearly wanting us to hear him, he said under his breath that he had to get shrapnel out of him. We humored him. I remembered another time that was even better. We were taking a break and several people stepped away from the table, leaving just me, him, and one other person. He pulled out his phone and pretended to have a brief conversation. He did not say hello. He only said talk to me. Then he ended with I am on it and hung up. Story 28. I had a friend in college who was a serial liar. He told all kinds of crazy stories that must have satisfied some psychological need, though they were harmless. He said he developed a theory on how to bend light passing through air and pitched the idea to the physics department. They set up an experiment and proved his theory true. He was a general studies major. I kept asking which professor it was and how the experiment worked, but he kept changing the subject. Story 29. An ex-housemate was the most chronic liar I have ever met. She also stole from all the housemates and from her workplace and keyed my car. Here are some of her most memorable lies. She claimed her father was the former chief executive officer of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. She claimed to be having an affair with one of the shift managers at the bar where we worked. He was engaged to someone else. She said the venue manager tried to sexually assault her and that security at our workplace knew but kept it quiet at her request. She pointed at a wedding advertisement on a bus, where the model's face was not visible, and claimed the model was her. After a car accident that killed several teenagers in the area, she claimed she had been with them that night but had left the car just before the crash. She said she could do a bond clean by herself to get the rental deposit back, but she did nothing and we had to redo it. She claimed her father was verbally abusive, although her sisters said he was not. She had the license required to be a shift manager, which was a legal Queensland requirement for liquor venues at the time, but she did not tell our workplace because they would promote her and she did not want that responsibility. Story 30. My coworker once tried to convince me that centaurs exist. She said they lived in a gated community in Hollywood and did all the horse stunts for movies. Did we both know it was a lie? Yes, we did. Did she ever admit it? No, and I admire that about her. Story 31. I have had toddlers with faces, hands, and clothes covered in peanut butter swear up and down that their sibling was the one who ate it. One of my favorites from a couple of years ago, Sean, with his hands covered in the charcoal he had used to write it, said, I did not write that. Story 32. The cat scratched me. You literally do not own a cat, though. My fork fell onto my arms then. I do not know. Story 33. I met someone who told me that he drank too much with his friends, suffered alcohol poisoning, and died. After he died, his friends threw him under a bed, where he remained for 3 days before coming back to life. He said I could ask his friends if I did not believe him. I have not seen him since. Story 34. When I was 16, I had a crush on one of my coworkers and he liked me back. I thought things were going well until I asked him if he wanted to go out on our shared day off. He agreed, but on the day of he canceled and said he needed to take care of his fish. The plot twist is that I had told a few friends, 2 of whom worked with both of us, and I went on and on about how rude it was that he did not even give me a believable lie. Those friends were hanging out and went to Walmart that day, and they ran into my crush buying food and supplies for his fish. He told them how excited he was about the fish too. I felt like the biggest asshole. Story 35. Yes, I did all my homework in about 5 minutes. I promise. Holy shit, this comment blew up. Thanks, laughing out loud. Story 36. My friend said he had a body count of over 200. He was a slightly overweight man who spent all his free time playing video games and hated leaving his apartment. Story 37. Does it count if the person believed me because I told them the world was black and white until the first nuclear explosions? Story 38. The Easter Bunny. Yes, we had to wait while the eggs were being hidden. Story 39. My classmate was unmuted during an online class and was watching a video, claiming it was a math video. We were in health class. Story 40. That's not a hickey. I bruised my neck helping my sister move today. Thank you for the awards. I can't believe my top comment is about my shitty ex. I am laughing my ass off. Story 41. My mom opened the door to my closet weed farm. She asked, "What is this?" I panicked and said, tomatoes?" She replied, "Right? Be careful with those lamps." She never asked about my tomatoes. Edit. This happened in my apartment. She was looking for something and accidentally opened the closet. Story 42. I feel good enough today. For flight training, anytime you fly, you must certify that you are physically and mentally fit. This means you have eaten within the past 6 hours, had a 10-hour rest period that included 6 to 8 hours of sleep, and that the rest ended no more than 16 hours ago, and you do not have excessive external stress. People lie about this all the time. Story 43. You are the best I have ever had. Edit. Thank you for the award, kind stranger. Story 44. She said I love you after I found out she had been cheating on me. She had the audacity to kiss me too. Story 45. An employee of mine took a half-day off to attend a parent-teacher conference in the afternoon. He was scheduled for the morning shift but called at the last minute and said it had been moved, so he could not come in. He later claimed the meeting was being extended and finally showed up around 4 p.m. He insisted the school had moved his appointment to 10 a.m., even though his visitor badge clearly stated that he had checked in at 2 p.m. Story 46. When I was in high school, a classmate said he made more than $20 an hour working part-time as a banquet server. I did the same job and made $6.30 per hour. I told him he was lying, but he insisted he was not. I asked him to bring a pay stub to prove it. He said he did not have one. He regularly lied about many things, and this was the first I remember. I'll never understand compulsive liars. I'm pretty sure our manager was not making $20 an hour, for goodness sake. Story 47. A classmate in 8th grade insisted that he and his father had made a deep-sea dive to the Titanic over winter break. Sure thing, Sam. Story 48. I told this lie to my mom when I was a 3-year-old. I was coloring the wall in the hallway with my stuffed bunny in my hand. I wasn't much of a rule breaker, so this one really stuck with my mom. My mom came into the hallway and asked, "What did you do?" I looked at Bunny and said, "Bunny did that." My mom said, "Well then tell Bunny that he shouldn't do that anymore, because now we have to repaint the wall and that's not nice." I looked at Bunny and said, "Bunny, you really can't do that. That's not nice." Meanwhile, I still had the markers in my other hand. Wow, thank you for the rewards. These are my first. Story 49. My supervisor was angry with me after we had some issues. She said, "Excuse me, I want to go to the toilet." But she actually went to vent her anger to other coworkers. She should have moved farther away because I could hear her. Stupid. Story 50. If you tell a teacher, the bullies will leave you alone. That lie ruined my school life. Story 51. Unexpected item in the bagging area. It is expected. I just scanned it. Story 52. Someone once repeated my story as if it were theirs. I had told them something funny that happened to me, and 6 months later they claimed it had happened to them. Story 53. Every time my 5-year-old swears she has brushed her teeth, her breath tells me a different story. Story 54. I will be ready in 5 minutes. Never has that been the case. Story 55. I worked with a man who was a compulsive liar. After working with several people like him over the years, I came to see it as an odd personality trait. He was a New York Jets fan like me. One day, when the Jets were doing well, I asked if he had seen the playoff game the night before. He said he had been at the game, But he could not have been because he was at work with me at kickoff. Story 56. Yes, the college administration has decimated other departments, but they were just laying off staff, not part-time librarians. I had been there nearly 13 years. A month later, both of us were gone. I was rehired 5 months later at reduced pay. It has been 2.5 years back, and returning was probably the worst decision, but at 50, with a mood disorder, I do not have many other options. Story 57. In a meeting, a coworker told me I did not need to sign off on his task because my supervisor had already checked it. That was odd, because my supervisor had been off all week and had left me in charge. He looked surprised when I pointed this out, as if a ghost had checked his work. He had not thought the story through. Story 58. My dad hadn't touched a single button on the remote, and all the channels had become Spanish on their own. Story 59. I walked upstairs to tell my kid to hurry and be ready to go, 15 minutes after I had already told him and seen him on his phone through the slightly open door. Why aren't you ready yet? Get off your phone. I wasn't on my phone. Story 60. Everything my younger brother has ever said shows that he is very bad at lying, but he lies all the time. Story 61. Once my parents told me that Santa wasn't real. I knew he was real because I saw him break open the door with a crowbar and carry a large bag. Story 62. My best friend's ex-fiancée tried to convince us that she was part of the Russian mafia and had killed 30 people. We are in our late 20s. Story 63. She was a high school dropout who insisted she knew more about nutrition than I, a board-certified physician. Story 64. Yes, the company has been sold, but the new owners are not making any personnel changes. I have been fired 3 times because of changes in ownership. Story 65. Something a family friend said when he arrived in the United Kingdom. A child asked, "But if you're from South Africa, why aren't you black?" The family friend replied, "Well, when you cross the equator, you turn white." Story 66. A friend told me to come and visit. It was a 120-mile journey because he was off work. However, he was at work when I arrived. Story 67. I used to work in social housing. Once a man tried to claim he was unemployed and had no income or benefits. His argument was undone by the fact he was sitting in a full Tesco uniform. Story 68. A coworker claimed he earned 5 gold stars on every song in Guitar Hero 2. I played every day and could not come close, so his claim seemed far-fetched. A few months later, I played with him when someone brought a system to work, and I became convinced he was exaggerating. Story 69. As a child, my older brother told me there were people who were allergic to air and had to breathe orange juice. I was naive. Story 70. I'm a plus-size woman. I walked into my boyfriend's bedroom and found a butterfly thong lying on the floor that was a size small. He had the audacity to look at me and say, "Oh, those aren't yours?" I was laughing my ass off. "No, they're not." Story 71. The teacher said the assignment was not required or would be done in class. I promised I had completed it. My child and his homework are going to kill us both. Story 72. The claim "I don't tell lies" might have been somewhat believable if she had not been known as the biggest liar most of us had ever met. Story 73. No, you don't look like you have gained any weight. This was said to my sister at the weigh-in, who was recovering from severe anorexia. Edited note. I was the liar in this instance. Story 74. I can't. I'm going on a date at Chick-fil-A. It was a Sunday. Story 75. I see a future for us, he said after accepting a job in another country he had not mentioned applying for. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.